Welcome to Global Tax Talks. I'm Will Morris, and I'm delighted to be joined by Kunj Vaidya. Kunj, welcome.
Thank you.
So, Kunj, you're our global BMR and transformation leader for TLS, so a long title with lots in it. Let's talk about reinventing business this time. So, reinventing your business model isn't really at this stage, it's not an option. And we're just seeing it's a strategic imperative, if you will, for sustainable growth and long-term success. So what's driving businesses to rethink how they operate, and how is the tax function a critical part of that?
Well, your question is longer than my title.
only just. But yes, point taken.
Let's break it out into two parts, right? What's driving the change? And quite frankly, it doesn't take anybody too much. If you just look around, we've been talking about, as PwC, we've been talking about mega trends for more than 10 years now. And the pace of the mega trends, if I just thinking about counting them out, demographic shifts, geopolitical changes, technology changes, social instability, and sustainability, right? Climate changes. Right? These are the huge mega trends which were predicted to play out things probably 10 years hence is what we are starting to see already today. Right? And that's what's really triggering many of the things that we are starting to see. Where is that going? It creates a lot of short-term tensions. It creates a lot of pressure points that we are seeing, and companies have to constantly navigate through those short-term pieces. Like, for example, look at these shooting interest rates that we're talking about. Just the short-term supply shortages of items that you can think of, and I can keep counting things like that, right? You have to navigate through those, but at the same time, start thinking about, is this sustainable for the future? What does the future really look like, and where do I go from here? So it's really these changes and the pace of those changes driving the businesses to change, or what we are calling it as business model reinvention. And it's also validated through, if you look at the PwC CEO surveys, over the last 3 years, it's been constantly reporting more than 40% of the CEOs reporting that their business will not be viable the way it is in next 5 to 10 years, right? Even the reframing tax survey we did shows that 90% plus people have already reported their business is undergoing some major change. So it's all here, it's all happening. These are the drivers. Second part of your question, which is
a long question,
which is the tax impact of this. Simply put, we have very recent study that was released is there is about $7 trillion of value in motion as these trends are impacting the businesses to change, as they are moving from industries to ecosystems, ultimately to serve the domains that we are talking about, whether it is make, whether it is care, whether it is food. As that is happening, we're looking at $7 trillion of value exchanging hands. If there is one single stakeholder combined globally, is the taxman out there, on a gross basis, because some will lose, some will gain, of course. And that's on the lighter side, but that's really the key part. Anytime there is anything that changes in business, you would have 4 things that definitely gets affected. You could have change in your intellectual property. You may have to create, you may have to buy, you may have to move. Any of that could happen. And hence, the other thing that happens is transaction flows. How are your transaction flows going? Where are you really sourcing from? Where are you distributing? How are you doing it? The third thing that gets changed is resource allocation that you can think of, right? Resources, infrastructure, which includes people as well, and then the assets. And how are you funding these assets? And anytime any of these things get affected, it's essentially the 4 factors of production you think about. Anytime anything gets affected in these, there is a tax question to be answered. There is a legal question to be answered. Does the contract allow me to do it? Does it not allow me to do it? Are there regulations that limit me to do it? What will be the tax impact? Do I have the cash? Where do I really get the cash to do this? Are there incentives out there that could actually help me get through some of these as well? So those are the implications from a tax perspective.
Okay, so let me try to ask you a shorter question this time. Sorry about that. So look, there are many tax levers for companies to consider that can impact the bottom line. You just mentioned credits and incentives, for example. So how do they benefit from adding tax to their reinvention toolkit? Which is
I don't promise to keep the answer short.
And I don't hold you to that either.
There are multiple ways, right? But the first, if you were to think about tax, what comes to you first as a layman is tax is confusing.
Mhm.
It's all the gray matter out there, right?
Right.
There's so many uncertainties because different regulations. You're talking about global economy, multinationals functioning in this fracturing world that we're talking about, things changing. Look at the changes that are happening around the tariffs and around. Tariff changes have been a business as usual, but the intensity of those changes makes things very difficult. So one is to navigate those uncertainties. Anytime you're trying to change a business, you need to do that. Second is, like it or not, nothing ever gets over in tax.
Right.
It comes and catches on to you 10 years later.
It's a surprise.
15 years later. Absolutely, right? And so it's important that when you are taking these decisions, the right considerations are going in there so that you're not creating a ticking time bomb for yourself.
Right.
And the last one, which I think we often miss, is tax is not all gray and red. There is a green part of tax.
Right.
There's so many incentives and enablers out there, rightly so, opportunities, right? When as we speak, well, you would know this, there are more than 450 sustainability-linked incentives out there. There's so many production-linked incentives. There's so many IP regimes, IP box regimes out there. All of these are to enable the businesses to do what they need to be doing and grow further. So it's all of this could actually be funding some of the projects that you're wanting to undertake.
Great. That was a shorter answer, but thank you. Okay, so last question. As as our global PMR and transformation leader, what are you seeing? I mean, with companies that have, are their tax functions fit for this purpose? What about C-suites? Are the C-suites actually focused on bolstering the company's tax resources to better support the business?
Interesting question, and I have to answer this one in yes and no for both parts.
Okay.
And I'll walk you through that, right? Certainly, the tax function has a desire to be more adapt to the situation, but they are extremely tied down. And this came out in our reframing tax survey too. They're extremely tied down with the kind of, there's a whole entire wall of compliance requirements, and they're just emerging around it. Look at you. I mean, we hardly got our head out of CBCR, and then there is CBAM, there is CSRD, and Pillar 2, and all of that, right? I mean, it's just tremendous amount of resources going into just keeping your head above all of that and getting your compliances done. That where do you have the time to be able to match up to? Luckily, two things are happening. One is there are a lot of good technology developments, which is allowing, or which at least promises today to allow companies to be able to get out of this cycle. So, and the tax departments of companies that we're working with are actively considering this, right? So they're very open to it. In fact, a few years back, if you would remember, a lot of tax directors had technology starting to appear in their KPIs. And today we start seeing transformation appear in their KPIs, right? And that's a trend that we are seeing. So that's a very good thing. So there is definitely a keen interest to make that happen. On the C-suite side, we find clients. I think there's meeting of mind in terms of the language. The gap it really is with the language that exists. It's about usually we tax people end up very much into the implications. Very much into, therefore what? If this is what's going to happen, what's the withholding tax? What's the arm's length that's going to happen? What's the VAT? Versus what's the impact of that? Am I going to sit on $100 million trapped in losses in some jurisdiction, which is value? By the way, we tax people are the only one who value losses. Or am I going to be trapped with another 100 million sitting somewhere in cash, which I'll need to mobilize for this, right? And if that's the narrative which can really enable the businesses, that's the gap that we see.
Kunj, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll definitely need to get you back to get updates on this, but thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure, Will. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for joining us, and come back next time so that you stay global tax ready.